welcome today to our interpersonal communication workshop. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy work schedules to meet with me today. For any of you, I have been at the company for about 6 months, so if any of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Chelsea Myhreec. I'm your HR coordinator. And today I just wanted to talk to you guys, the assembly department, about just some issues that we've all both noticed. Our department as well as your department have noticed throughout the past couple of months have just needed to be addressed. So as you'll see, the booklets in front of you, if you want to get those out, this is just going to run through the course of our training workshop. So on page 2, this is just an introduction of what we'll be talking about today. Basically, I just want to thank you all for, like I said before, coming out and spending your day, rather than being at work or taking a break or something, coming to this workshop. I really appreciate it. And then on page 3, this is a table of contents. So throughout the workshop, if you want to refer back to see where we're going to be in the essence of things, how everything's going to be down the line, you'll just refer back to this. And then that's on page 3 if anybody needs to know. So schedule, this is the most important part. You want to know what's going on today, right? Okay, so first thing, which we already did, was the welcome and introduction. So that's just basically telling you about, our topic of the day, and then what we're going to be discussing and the objectives and everything. Okay, now on the second thing that I would like to talk about, it's on page 5. It's our pre-assessment. But what I would like is just kind of get an idea of what kind of experience in the past that you have had, even in previous workplaces, at church, any clubs that you may be in. It's just a pre-assessment on what you've done in the past as far as conflict in your daily lives or how you deal with communication. So from page 5 to page 6, what you're going to be doing is you're going to read each question. You'll answer it by circling Y for yes, N for no, and then whenever you're finished, if you can, just as neatly as possible, tear it out of the booklet and just hand it back to me, and it'll be just a nice thing that I'll correspond with a post-assessment. At the end of this, we're also doing a post-assessment, so I'll compare and contrast. So it'll just be a nice thing that I can do back to my professor. After that, then we'll get started with our workshop. Okay guys, well thank you so much for completing that assessment. I really appreciate that. So we'll look into that later on down the road. Now the next thing is on page 7. Page 7 and 8 is going to be the survey results that most of you took a couple weeks ago. Some of you, I spoke to you about it, others you received the survey. So you can just look to see the results. This is basically how I gauged what was important for all of you and what we decided to discuss today. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be discussing today is if you go to page 9, this is just if you want to refer back to something to look at as I'm speaking. It just talks about our objectives and key topics for today. So we already discussed that we're going to be talking about workplace conflict and professional communication. So the first thing we're going to talk about is workplace conflict. So basically, it seems easier said than done, but when you're dealing with conflict in the workplace, you need to actually embrace it. It seems like something that you would just be completely deterred from. Most people are. It gets very uncomfortable sometimes. But if you embrace it and you face it with a positive attitude, and you kind of realize, hey, I have opportunities to grow from this and to learn, the more that you face conflict, whether it's small or large, you're going to be more comfortable and confident in yourself as a coworker, as a wife, a husband, a child. You're going to be able to, see that you have conflict in your life, but you'll be able to do it in a productive way and to just talk to people about it. So, all right, so as far as when people don't embrace conflict, I was looking online and I actually found Forbes, which is a very well-renowned business organization. They basically said that if you do not embrace conflict and you just let it go, there's a lot of issues that there can be, that can happen, such as loss of productivity, which in your booklet, if you turn to page 10, I have little fill in the blanks for you. So if you turn to page 10, when you embrace conflict, so unresolved conflict often, the first question, often results in loss of productivity. It stifles your creativity, and then it also is the product of the creation of barriers to cooperation and collaboration. But when you recognize it and admit that there is an issue and that you need to avoid ignoring it, then you can deal with it and then just go on with it. Okay, so for the next fill in the blank, it is emotions are one of the main reasons why conflict often occurs. So, and could anybody think of a reason why your emotions would get in the way and would cause you to have conflict, whether, in the workplace, at home? Do you ever think that maybe your emotions overtake the situation and you kind of blow it out of proportion more so? Yeah, I know I tend to do that sometimes. Okay. So now for opportunities for growth. I think one of the main reasons why conflict is it's a scary thought. I mean, we pay people to be mediators because we don't want to deal with conflict, whether we're getting a divorce or we're having an issue with a neighbor or something like that. A lot of times people will hire mediators because they do not want to deal with it, or they don't know how. They've never been trained. They've never had any way to meet that conflict head on in a productive manner. So if you see that there are opportunities for growth, then you'll be able to meet them and to just embrace your conflict, which is very important in life. If you go to the next line, is communication is a powerful skill that most do not utilize. When you're dealing with somebody that doesn't communicate towards you, like we were talking about earlier with being passive aggressive, that person is actually, or you, are very uncomfortable and scared to talk about it. So as far as dealing with it, that is something that you have to do. You can't just let it go by the wayside and ignore it. So when you are dealing with a passive aggressive individual, this is the next fill in the blank, you should try to encourage them to share the problem that they are facing. And to do that, what I would suggest doing is, if you kind of notice that they're being a little bit pouty, or you can see that you may have told them to do something in the workplace and they're ignoring you or not doing it to the full ability, maybe you can actually tell, the way that their work quality has really changed. You can kind of sense that they are being passive aggressive and they may be starting to resent you for that reason. So the best way that you can deal with that head on is to just say, pull them aside and take them into a private area and just listen to them. Sit down with them and say, I want to listen to you. I want to know what's wrong. I can tell that you're upset, and I just need you to sit down with me and figure out what's going on. Now, at first, they may just say, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm not going to talk to you about this. But if you really just sit down and you say, no, I need to listen to you, I want to listen to you, then they will be more susceptible to saying, okay, well, maybe this person actually does care about me and they care about the problems that I'm facing, and they'll be more willing to share with you for that reason. So as long as you're listening to them, then that's like the first step in communication, because it's hard to do. And how many times, think about it, how many times are you in a conversation with somebody and you could say that you're listening, but how often are you talking to them and the first thing in your head is you just want to answer them? Raise your hand if you've ever experienced that before, where you've been listening to somebody and you're just waiting for that moment to where you can respond back. You haven't really been listening to them. You just want to get that moment of, oh, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to say to them. Whereas you can, and if you're on the receiving end of that, you can kind of tell you're talking to somebody, and you can see that they're almost wanting to interrupt you. And as a person, when you're on that end, like, they're not really listening to me. And if that keeps happening, you're more likely to practice passive-aggressive behavior. If you go to page 11 of your manual, we are going to talk about, I kind of want to get an idea of some situations that have happened to any of you in the past where either you were passive-aggressive or your coworker or friend or family member was passive-aggressive, and how did you deal with that? How did you, what were some feelings that you had? So I do have some lines below of, so maybe you can think and kind of brainstorm. Think of some words, some key words, some key phrases that you can associate with how you felt either being the one who didn't want to deal with the conflict or dealing with a coworker, friend, family member who didn't want to deal with the conflict and you were on the receiving end of that. So just take a few moments and think of some key words or phrases that you would associate with that. Okay guys, so thank you so much for taking time to write the answers in your book. So what I want to do now is, since all of you did take time to, to write everything, I would like to start on this side of the room and work our way around. And we're just going to discuss situations that you've encountered in the past with passive aggressiveness. So can you start with me first?
Sure. So for the first question, passive aggressive encounters just make me feel attacked and therefore defensive in return.
Absolutely. Do you feel that like you're ever maybe attacking somebody else as well?
Sure.
Sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. And can you tell like a difference in their personality and their demeanor when they're acting that way?
Yeah, you get negative response in return.
Absolutely.
I tend to be the more passive-aggressive one, so I feel like I don't know, I tend to just kind of hold everything in until all of a sudden it explodes all at once, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a really, really bad thing.
Do you feel that way because maybe the person that you're feeling that anger towards, do you feel maybe they just aren't listening to you, or are you just kind of nervous to maybe rock the boat, start a conflict that you don't really want to deal with?
I usually like to avoid the conflict. Yeah, I try to just keep things on just kind of level. I don't like the roller coaster of emotions that couples with the aggressive side of things.
Absolutely. So, do you want to share your thoughts?
I think when it comes to like receiving like passive aggressive people, I usually feel like ignored and like they're not listening. But if I'm going to be passive aggressive, I usually am very curt, very short, like, okay, this is your answer, you can leave now. So that's kind of how I operate.
Absolutely. Do you find yourself maybe when you are being passive aggressive yourself, do you still get the job done that they were asking you to do, or do you kind of just say, I just put it off to the side, if I get it done, I get it done, but the quality maybe changes a little bit?
I think for me, I still do the job, but the whole aspect of like being friendly, getting to like grow as a person and like know the people that I work with, and creating a relationship that's not there. It's just like, I'm here to do a job. You work with me. Let's do the job.
Absolutely.
You can go on to
And that can be an issue on both sides, because some people, when they are dealing with that on their end, being passive aggressive, they won't do the job correctly. They just won't care because they're like, well, this person doesn't care about me. Why should I care about what the product that I'm giving to them? But then on the other end, how you're doing it the right way in that you're getting the job done correctly, but half of the other part of the job is to instill these quality relationships with your coworkers, with people that you interact with. So that still can kind of damage a workplace, which is why we're here today. We want to talk about this for sure. Do you want to share?
Yes. Like the 3 words that I wrote was ignore, not listen to, misunderstood. Like I'm probably the most passive aggressive person. I hate conflict. I'm more passive than aggressive, but I don't like being mean to people. But mostly when group settings and working on group projects, people aren't like willing to do their part, like things are not going right, I have to do everything. Even then I get I'm mad, I have to do everything, but I don't want to like start any problems. So like I'm very short with the people, but but I still like get what I need to get done. So I know it's for a grade or something important. So I'm more passive. I do everything, but eventually I bottle it up like a rug. Everything's swept under the rug, and eventually you pull everything off the rug. And then that one person who probably only did one thing bad to me did like everything that happened to me in like 10 years to get everything. So
Exactly.
on that.
Kind of like all that conflict that you swept underneath that rug turns into a mountain of issues that ends up being a lot harder to address than that little issue that weeks, months, years happened prior, and then you just build this up, and then at that point it gets very difficult to face it because you have all these other things that kind of played into that conflict. So, you know, I tend to do the same thing as well. So it's difficult. It's difficult to meet with conflict.
Nervous, shocked, and angry because I'm not really expecting them to do that to me. I'm shocked.
Do you ever, or now are you passive aggressive yourself?
Yeah,
at
every once in a
work?
while, I'm like, I'm not really understanding why they're doing that. So just kind of like my anger is down on them. Like I'm not really meaning to, but it happens.
They'd just rather just
Yeah.
not even deal with it. Don't want to, you know, rock the boat or anything like that. Just like, I feel taken advantage of. Yes, that's very common.
Especially when my coworkers, I feel like they're not doing their fair share of the work, or they're not doing their best.
And when you're at equal level with your coworker, it's very difficult to say, to meet them on any level and say, you know, we need to be doing their job, because I'm sure you probably feel this way. You're on equal levels. How are you going to tell them? You don't have the authority that he said he was. You don't have that authority to tell them what to do. But at the same time, maybe talking to your supervisor and not necessarily tattling, but explaining, you know, I really am putting in a lot of work and a lot of effort into my job, but I've noticed certain people maybe aren't. That may be a way to deal with that conflict.
For me, it would be when I do my job, I'm doing the best job that I can. And when somebody does come up to me and tells me that I could be doing a better job, it's very difficult for me to take that, not personal, because here I think I'm already doing my best. So I become aggressive then in nature, and sometimes without thinking, I'll attack her character or something like that, to where I need to think differently.
Absolutely. And that affects your relationships at work too, because, you know, sometimes it's maybe a friend at work, but other times, most of the time, it's just an acquaintance, somebody that you wouldn't spend any time with, but your work relationship is very important. So when you feel you're attacked, your first instinct is to fight in some way, and it can be uncomfortable, but if you're more of an assertive personality, your way of kind of battling them out is to go back and to say, no, I don't like this about your personality or that, and that just kind of creates more of a conflict than there was before. So, but it's hard to do. It's hard when you have a more assertive personality and you just want to show them how you're feeling. Do you want to share?
Okay, for me, I feel like I've grown up in a different world compared to whippersnappers out there that are so young. I mean, I'm like older than anybody in the room. Maybe, yeah, I'm even older than Curtis. When I was raised, the jobs, I only had 3 jobs my entire life, and the jobs I had, I really could think about all the employees and the conflicts, and it was so smooth. I mean, I had one boss that was very aggressive, and he was just trying to make a name for himself, and he degraded everybody. He made me feel like, I don't even want to work here. But that was just a minor situation. I think what gave me a very big start in my life was Paris Island. It's a Marine Corps base. And those drill instructors there are eating nails for breakfast. And I mean, they put me through a ritual that was so hard and tough that I had a totally, and I knew what it was all about. They wanted me to come back in one piece, and so they're going to make it as tough on me as they can. So that's really the only tough situations I had, aggressive situations, other than maybe road rage today, I think.
And I mean, we are talking about life in general. I know this has stemmed from problems at work, but if you're able to do something as small as maybe not being aggressive or passive aggressive while you're driving, something as simple as that. It's an everyday activity that if you start small, you'll work your way into more difficult issues of conflict and you do something small like that, bigger conflict, you can meet it and it's no problem at all.
I have been a passive-aggressive person. I still have those tendencies sometimes myself, but on that end of the spectrum, you often feel victimized, or there's a lack of closure to the conflicts you face because you haven't addressed them. So it's just this ongoing kind of tit-for-tat escalation. Okay, what's coming next? What's coming next? I'm gonna hide shrimp up in the curtains and I'm gonna let it rot just to see what the other person does. I have never done that. I have never done that.
Has it crossed your mind?
It has crossed my mind because it's passive aggressive and you don't want to confront that person and say, listen, I think that this whole situation is bad. But having undergone a little bit of assertiveness training and trying to enact that in a passive aggressive environment doesn't always work out well either.
Absolutely. And I like your analogy of putting the shrimp in the curtain, because if you really think about it, it's really what conflict is about, and being passive aggressive, because you're kind of just collecting these nasty remnants of your anger and your frustration and you're hiding it away. They start to stink. They make your attitude stink. They make the way that you are in the workplace stink, just, and then it spreads towards everybody.
I deal with multiple levels of conflict in the workplace, and I get angry, feel insignificant, feel like my department doesn't matter a lot of times. And try to uphold policies of the company, and it just doesn't work sometimes. But I have an excellent work partner right now. We pray. And that tends to help, so we're bringing prayer back into the workplace.
And that's amazing. I mean, and I think personally, that's why I chose to go to the university. I don't want to get too much into it because that's our training, but it's amazing that we live in the country that we're in, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. So if we put God for anybody that is, or whatever religion that you are, but if you are a Christian, or if you just pray and you kind of just get rid of, just remember that for the most part, there may be an underlying issue, but if you just give it to God, He'll take it away. You just have to be patient because it's in His time, but He'll take it away from you. So, and it really puts peace into the workplace. So I like that you were the last one to say that. That's awesome. That's amazing. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for participating in this activity. Okay, so now here's the fun part. I created a game for us to play, and it is called Not My Story, Our Story. Basically, everything that we just learned regarding conflict is incorporated into this game. And I'm going to read you the directions, but if you have any questions or concerns, we'll bring them up. And then what we're going to do first and foremost is, after I read you the directions, I want each of you to pair off. It might be easier just to pair with the person sitting next to you. And we have an even number of people, so we'll have about 7 groups. And after we get started, I'll be walking around the room. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll help you out with it. So, but it's kind of fun. It's basically you're building a story, and I'll read the directions to you guys. So if you go to page 12 of your manual, it gives you directions. Okay. So basically, you are going to have a starter word. There's a list of starters, and if you're wondering what that is, basically, if you guys have ever played the game where you start off a story and then somebody continues it on for you. Sometimes it's just words, but this is going to be a little bit longer than that. So basically, you'll start with your starter word. It'll be once upon a time, I went to the store and bought a. That'll be your starter, and then the next person, the person who didn't choose to start with the starter word, you'll say something else. So once upon a time, I saw a duck, or something like that. And then you'll just continue on. And it can be, the funny part is it's probably going to be a really goofy story. It's not going to make much sense, but you have to have some sort of a path leading up until your conclusion. Now your goal is to have the longest story out of anybody. So you and your partner are going to try to just keep going along with the story. Like I said, it can be goofy, but it has to have some sort of path along to it. You can't just say, I saw a duck and then I left or something like that. You have to keep going with your story, and it'll be kind of fun. So now the thing is, if your partner picks a path of which your story is going and you kind of want to divert and pick another path, you can. So if you start talking about a duck, you can say, it went to the lake. And then the next person, if they don't like where you took the story, would say, and then it left and it went to go have dinner or something like that. Yeah, so it's kind of a goofy little game, but it really incorporates, you know, at the end of it, we'll discuss how, you know, if I don't really like where my partner brought the game, I would have rather them stay at the lake, something like that. So, but it also goes with communication as well, because you're going back and forth. So anyway, all right, so what we'll do first is pick your partner. Are we all good? We'll just pick. Okay, perfect. So that's your partner. And then, okay, perfect. So it'll be 2, 2, 2, 2. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Now, you'll pick a partner. So the two of you talk, who is going to begin the activity. So whoever begins the activity of the starter list that I gave you in your booklet, you're going to say that starter phrase. And then the next person who doesn't have the starter phrase, you're going to combat that with your duck or whatever you choose to bring along with that. But you can choose any of the starters. You don't have to. You don't all have to use the same one. And then. Let me see. Oh, another part of this is try not to pause. So while you're playing the game, don't pause. Yes, that's the other thing. You can't pause and think, where do I want my duck to go? You have to just think of whatever's at the top of your head. So it'll just keep the game going, because remember, the goal is to make the longest story. So, and while you're doing that, what I would suggest doing, because you do want to have a long story, is each of you remember how many times you contributed to the conversation. At the very end, we're going to see who had the longest, and then we have some questions afterwards, okay? All right, so we'll take a few minutes to do that. Okay. Really quick. So that was a pretty funny game, right? Yeah. It looks like a lot of you were laughing, so maybe there's been a whole lot of conflict, but we'll talk about this. Okay, well, group to my left, can you tell me, first of all, how many lines did you have combined, I guess? So.
28, 28.
Good job, good job. Now with the game, did you find the way that your partner took the game that you were like, or your story, you didn't really like it, or did you kind of agree? Were you thinking, oh, I'm hoping that they take it this way, but they took it another way?
We did have a moment where she said something and I was like, oh, I like the way this story is going.
So we were really prepared for it, but you just kind of went with it.
Yeah, it was like every time she'd say something, like, yeah, sweet, we can shoot New Zealand, let's go.
Oh my God, awesome. Okay, next group.
We had 60 lines together.
Oh man, good job. Very good. And give me a little run through of
It got bananas. We started off with like this little girl that lost her rainbow shoes on a river, and it ended with like her ancestor's story. Yeah, it was crazy. And there came a point where she's like, I think our story's ended. And I was like, no, we're gonna win. So we continued. It got just crazy.
Did either one of you think, oh, I don't really like how the story ended, or you were like, I could see myself thinking of another way I would have done it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, but we were trying not to pause, so it got really difficult. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? So I was like, bananas.
another reason why conflict happens. I know in your department especially, the ability to think on your feet and act quickly kind of gives you not enough time to either hear directions thoroughly or give directions thoroughly. So if somebody just quickly tells you, okay, you gotta get this done, come on, you get kind of flustered, but you just go with it. And a lot of times the results are not exactly how you would like because of that. So it's nice to kind of practice thinking on your feet, and keeping your mind engaged, and just keep going, because that's the department. It's a quick moving department. So, next group.
We had 52.
Awesome, very good. Now, how did your story end up? Did you like it, or was there anything kind of like,
It was a little weird, but
Now, I saw you guys were laughing a lot. Is that because you really liked where it was going? You were having fun.
it was a crazy story. And it's still not finished, so.
It's still not finished. There you
It's
go.
universal.
Universal.
Space, I'm talking about space universal.
How many lines did you guys?
Well, we only had 80, because that's.
80?
40 she didn't say, and I said 40.
Oh my gosh. Well, that happens a lot too. Sometimes you're so worried about running out of time, you're not able to finish your story or your directions or the project that you're working on. So that can, down the road, turn into conflict. So
It was all fun.
it was all fun. Good. Well, hopefully we can use this in the workplace too, and it can be fun as well there. So what about your story? You guys were laughing too.
We had 58.
58, very good. Very good. So what was the conclusion of your story?
Our story started out by us going to the beach and taking some pictures, putting them on Facebook. Then a bunch of people saw them, came and visited, and then we told them to go south, and they got eaten by alligators.
Now, and you both agreed with the conclusion?
Very passive aggressive.
Oh my goodness. Now, did the people in your story, did they know you didn't like them? Did you convey that to them, or did you kind of, you didn't deal with the
I don't
conflict?
think so.
I don't think so. Because they really wanted to come visit us.
Yes. So you let them come, and you kept your feelings to yourself, but then they ended up getting eaten by alligators. Okay, nice. Well, that was really fun. Thank you guys so much for participating. I know you guys probably want to take a breather right now. The restrooms are right back here. I've got snacks on the table for you. I know a few of you got a little bit thirsty, so if you want any more to drink or to eat, we're going to take a little break, and then we'll start up in about 10 minutes, okay? So we'll stop for now. Well, welcome back from your break. I hope that was a nice little breather for just a few minutes. Now, we're going to be talking about professional communication. This is our next topic of the day. So, on that line, has anybody ever been in a workplace or church or school or anything like that, and you kind of feel like you were missing a piece of the information that somebody gave you? It's everybody, right? It happens all the time. So, that is lack of communication, obviously. You're missing some sort of little piece that little piece is vital for you to complete everything else that you need to do to complete either something in school or in your job or to work with your coworkers. They may have tell you something and you need further information to continue on. Have you ever been in a situation where you missed some piece of information, but you maybe were a little bit nervous to ask for further direction or further communication because either A, they may have thought you're not listening to them and they may have, been angry with you over that, or you were embarrassed, maybe you didn't want them to feel as if you were incompetent or you weren't ready for the information or whatever that they had to present to you. Well, you're not alone. That happens to everybody. It happens to me all the time. But there is hope. So increased communication. I found some information from the Diversity Journal. They basically said that if you are in the workplace or anywhere else in your life and you learn different tips and techniques to better your communication and fill in those gaps where you may be lacking, your productivity, so including our department that we're talking about right now, now can increase, just something as simple as one tactic or another can increase by at least 10%, which is amazing. As far as the topic goes that we're going to be talking about today, is one thing that can pose an issue when you're communicating in the work environment or anywhere else is overcoming your fear and anxiety. So like I was just talking about, you may be afraid to, take that further step and ask questions and figure out what you need to do next. We have tips today that we're going to talk to you about to overcome that fear and anxiety. So overcoming fear and anxiety, that can be a really big issue in communication. Something that is important once you overcome that fear and anxiety is influencing your coworkers. You want to make sure that your positive attitude is influencing them rather than your negative attitude. You don't want them to act upon something that you're doing. I mean, you can really only control yourself. So as long as you try your best and you work on your attitude, you can influence your coworkers and the people around you. We're also going to talk about tips for communicating and ways that you can better your work environment. So now, professional communication. What is that? It can be in the form of an email, it can be talking to somebody, it could be, we use radios, it could be over the radio, something like that. So just any way that you're talking to somebody, it could be any way at all. Now, when you are presenting information to the people that you're interacting with, first and foremost, making sure that it's thorough communication is you want to make sure that the information you're presenting is accurate. You don't just say whatever you feel like. You need to have some sort of research, education that is backing that. You can't just, tell somebody something because you feel like that is, something that's within your opinion, has to be backed. So if you have information backing that, that's step one. As long as it's accurate, you can go further from there. Another thing is be complete in your information. I know the game that we just played, it kind of showed you how, when you're thinking quick on your feet, a lot of times it's very hard to convey everything that you need to your audience. But if you practice on just thinking of the top bullet points that you need to get to, I guess you could say, the most important things that you need to talk about, as long as you do that, then you can just make sure that you have your complete information, and then they'll be more likely to understand what you're talking about. And then in addition to that, you need to make sure that you're understandable and you're clear. So whether that's you're speaking clearly, you're, if they look a little bit confused, you can ask them, did you understand what I'm saying? Do you want me to clarify anything with you? As long as you're, keeping that communication going and you're making sure that whoever you're speaking to is understanding what you're saying, then you're being a professional communicator. You're doing a good job. So another thing is, if they aren't understanding what you're saying, be very courteous and patient with them. Don't, it can be anything from, you may be saying something polite to them, but if your body language kind of shows, oh, I'm frustrated with you, I don't understand what I'm saying, or vice versa, you're just kind of being curt with them, and this is how it needs to be, and I don't understand what you're saying, then more than one, then you're really not acting on professional communication. You need to work on that and make sure that you're polite to the people you're talking to, and that they're willing to listen to you as well. Okay. So, overcoming fear and anxiety. First and foremost, just think of the way that you communicate with people as your own personal sense of style, I guess. You want people to see you, and instead of worrying about how your coworkers see you or how your friends see you, just think about, if you did something and you believe that it was correct and you did it based on morals and values, or as I was saying, the information that you presented, as long as you're doing that, that's the best that you can do. So you shouldn't really be focused on, oh, I really want to make my coworker happy, I really, I'll just tell them whatever they want to hear. Rather than doing that, in a polite way, tell them the truth. Tell them what they need to hear, but just make sure that you're doing so in a courteous, professional manner, and they're more than likely would be willing to listen to you. Even if they don't agree, at least they understand where you're coming from, and they'll have respect for you based on that. So now, the first little bullet point that we have on page 14, professional communication, the first bullet point we have is practice being assertive rather than aggressive in your tactics. So we talked about this a little bit when we were discussing being passive aggressive and versus being just aggressive. You want to meet somewhere in the middle. Within your booklet, I have the definitions of being aggressive versus being assertive, just so you kind of, I know a lot of times they tend to get confusing. Aggression is somebody that is ready to attack or confront the situation. It's not healthy. It really just makes you kind of want to step back and not really listen to what the person is saying, or just get away from them altogether. Whereas if you're assertive, you're showing your confidence. You're being dominant, but in a way that doesn't overpower or overwhelm somebody. So you can let your information be known in a way that is confident, whether it's your posture, it's the way that you talk, the way that you look them in the eye. This helps them know you're assertive, and whatever that is very important when you're communicating in a professional environment. Okay. So the next blank is, if you feel as though you are anxious over a situation, remember to assess the situation. So going back to that, we're talking about emotions, we're talking about, this is just overwhelming, and you tend to just kind of get bottled up, either anger or you're overwhelmed. Take a step back and breathe. If that means that you're talking to somebody, you need to breathe and go back to your office, or go get a drink of water. Just think about it. Think about, am I correctly assessing the situation? Is it worth, our conversation? Is this going to be productive to the work environment? If it's not, reevaluate it and then present the new way that you should be speaking to them. And if you believe that, I was going about it the correct way, then continue. Be professional, polite, and continue speaking to the individual that you're speaking to. Okay. Now, going off of that, this will help you influence your coworkers. So if you are professional, if you're polite, if you're very positive, and even if you're faced with a negative situation and it's very hard to look at it and say, I don't know what to do with this, think of the positive aspects of that situation, kind of the Pollyanna effect. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that movie, but it was about a young girl who, she was, she really had a hard situation. She was an orphan, her parents died. She was always very positive. And at first, people kind of got irritated with her. They're like, you're not really this positive. How could you be this positive? You have such a sad life. But she just looked at every situation, and she was able to see the positive and how, she could influence others and benefit by the situation, whether positive or negative. And people flocked to her. They ended up really appreciating and respecting her for the positive person that she was. So if you just try to do that, it can be hard sometimes, especially if you're having a rough day at work. But if you just think about the positive things, you have a job, you have a place to live, you're making a regular income. Think about that. Think about how those aspects of your life are more important than the problem at hand. So just face it professionally and confidently, and you'll be okay. So the next blank is having a positive attitude rubs off on others in your workplace, just as I was talking about. So if you keep being positive and you keep, doing as you should be doing, then your coworkers are eventually going to say, this is really working for you, so I think I'm going to try to be the same way. And then it will be, as I have with the definition on the same page, social contagion. That can go both ways. So if you're positive, you're going to get other people to be positive. But if you're negative, grumpy, and you're just looking at the situation all the wrong way, everyone else is going to look at it the same way. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And then the quote on the bottom, this is very important. Remember who you surround yourself with. not just at work, but your friends, even your family members. I know you're kind of stuck with your family, but you are, but you need to remember that if they are negative, they don't think of things in a positive way, don't let that rub on, well, don't let that rub off on you. You need to be just a positive light, and you will have the crowd that you want all around you. So the single biggest problem in communication is the illustration that it has taken place. Can anyone look at this quote and think of a situation where you may have thought that you talked to somebody, or you spoke with them, you explained a situation, gave them directions, and then they completely took it in the wrong way, or they just didn't understand what you were saying? That probably, happens to me all the time. And you kind of think, well, I spoke to them, I conversed with them, why don't they understand what I'm saying? Well, Mr. Shaw really captures a common problem that you see in professional communication, that use in even daily life. You speak to somebody, you see somebody, and you have a conversation, but you're missing some key aspects that we'll discuss now, some tips for communicating, and if you listen to the tips, then you won't have issues like that. So first and foremost, you want to keep on track. So if you go to page 15, I have kind of a list for you, or I have a list for you guys for tips for communicating. So first thing is keep on track. Second one is state your intent. So realize that you do need to get to a point. You can't just ramble on like the game that we just played. It just kind of went on and on and on. Some of you didn't, it was very long, but you didn't even end up getting to a conclusion. Well, you want to make sure, happened a lot, right? You want to make sure that you state your point, that it's clear, that it's concise, and that you do so and it's not abrasive or short-tempered or anything like that. You still want to maintain that positive and professional communication when you're working with your coworkers. And really, you just need to explain what you need. What do you need out of the person that you're speaking to? What is it that they need to understand and work on for whatever reason? Make sure that they're understanding of that. And then if they're still unsure, make sure that you're clear when you're speaking to them and that they seem like they're understanding of the situation. So as long as you have that, then you should be able to have a positive communication back and forth. So as long as your coworkers know that you're interested in that they're understanding what you're trying to say, then you should be able to go forth from that. Okay. So then the next one is be sure that if you do need to repeat yourself, you do so in a polite manner. So it does get kind of irritating sometimes if you kind of have to keep repeating yourself. But just remember that if you were to be rude to them, then the situation may just blow out of proportion. So just try to stay positive and calm and patient and just repeat yourself. Maybe try to reword it if they really don't understand, but just maintain that professional persona whenever you're speaking to them. The next one is the most important. You need to be able to listen. We were talking about earlier, listening it's active. You don't just hear somebody say something to you and think, okay, all right, and then go along your way. You really have to analyze what they're saying. You have to actively engage, and if it's not clear on what they're saying to you, ask more questions. If something wasn't clear, pick up on that and just keep. But at least it seems as if you're listening. At least you're trying to engage with them and listen. And if you're listening, then they can tell, and they have respect for you for that. The next one, which is very important, is don't make assumptions. So if you feel as if somebody said something but you're not 100% sure, don't make assumptions that either whatever they were telling you, if you weren't clear, whatever they were telling you was meant to be construed in some way, or that they may have had an attitude with you or something. Don't make assumptions. Make sure that you go back to the listening and that you're talking with them and you're going back and forth and making sure that it's clear and that both of you are on the same page. Okay, so we're gonna play our second game. And I know this one is more simple though, I promise. I feel like everyone has played this before. It's the game of telephone. So it'll be quick, it'll be painless. I will start it and then we're gonna go towards the end and you will end us off and will tell us what it is that I said, okay? All right, yes, it should be fun. Okay, so basically, you need a recap on what the rules are. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say once, and the same thing goes for each person after that. You can't say, what did you say? You go off of whatever you think they said, and then you repeat that to the next person, okay? All right, so does anybody have any questions about the telephone? Are we good? All right, okay. Okay, so this is actually an excellent example of how you miscommunicate. So if you go on page 17, I have some questions that correspond with our telephone game. So the first question, we obviously did not hear the sentence correctly. So it seems like somewhere in the middle there was a miscommunication, I'm guessing? Yeah? It seems like, because you all said that you heard that it was from a coconut and you heard that it was a cookie, correct? Okay, so somewhere in the middle. That happens a lot. Sometimes, you know, if you keep passing on the directions, there's something that's misconstrued. So, you know, if you ever deal with that, you need to go to the source and talk to them and say, listen, I'm not 100% sure. I know you were the one who gave out the directions, but could you clarify them for me? Could you explain further what was going on? I'm not 100% sure I understand. And if you do that, go to the source, they will, there's less likelihood that you're going to miscommunicate something. But thank you for playing that game. I know it's a classic game, but it's fun. Okay. So now the next thing is we are actually going to be wrapping up. It's on page 20 of your manual, page 20 and 21. This is a post-assessment, the one I was talking about when we were taking our pre-assessment. Just answer these questions. It's just kind of run through of how the survey or the workshop went. It's just kind of sort of a survey to try to see, you know, what we can do better next time, what age bracket you're in, that sort of thing. And then as far as the packets go, keep these. These are a good reference. So you can, you know, keep them at home, at work, anything like that, because I did include, I know a lot of it was fill in the blank, but if you look on page 18 and 19, I have what's called a reference manual. So on those pages, I kept key points that we spoke about during this training workshop. So if you ever trying to remember, what did she talk about a few months ago, a few years ago, whatever, you're able to look back on this and kind of highlight key points. So just nice reminders that you can have going through that. Basically, in conclusion, conflict and communication, they go completely, they mesh together to form interpersonal communication. So, you know, when you have conflict, you're going to continue to have conflict. Just because we have this training workshop does not mean that conflict will not exist in your life. But now that you've had training and we've practiced this a little bit more, you may feel more comfortable to embrace conflict and to meet it head on in not an aggressive manner, but an assertive manner. A way that you can speak to your coworkers, your friends, family in a way that's productive and efficient, and you're able to speak to them one-on-one and just be able to get any problems out on the table. So, but does anyone have any questions for me while I'm here, or any questions at all? Good? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your day, for participating. I really appreciate it. I know our department really appreciates it. And thank you so much. enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.